Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Clynton Caines, the lead engineer at Forefront. Good afternoon, Clinton.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm good. How you doing?
Doing well.
That's good. So to start with, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Sure. I'm the lead engineer at Forefront. I've been a software developer for over 20 years, full stack development, and I've found that I do really well working in early teams because I can work across the stack and build the different technologies that need to be developed. And so I work with Forefront, and when I'm not developing for Forefront, I'm advising other startups in this general early stage and so on. So a lot of that stuff going on in the startup world.
Yeah, so it's assuming since you're a lead engineer, I'm assuming you do like database work. I assume you do some coding.
Yeah, I definitely do coding. That's about 80% of my day. There is some management involved because I'm a lead developer with the rest of our team. And other than that, there's a ton of development both in the front end with website development, on the back end database development, like you mentioned, and just being able to decide what the architecture needs to be. That's a lot of what goes into those 80% of the time during the day.
Cool. And can you share with us what stack you're using at Forefront?
Yeah, we are generally a plain old JavaScript company. We recently added React to the mix, and then on the back end we use a lot of Google technologies.
Yeah, it's funny because I tell all kids in college now, they say, what programming language should I take? I tell everyone, just learn JavaScript. It's right?
Absolutely.
Back end and front end, it works on both. You have to learn one language.
Yep. That's, I tell the same story and I make the same suggestions.
Yes. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as an employee, which I'm assuming you were at one time, and now as a lead, technical lead?
Yeah. So for us, I'll start with the company. We actually came together, quite recently. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of me being part of the team, and as a really small team, we had folks in Kansas City, folks in New York, and I'm in Boston. We got together and went to Techstars in the middle of COVID or before COVID, and then COVID kicked us out. And so we ended up, scattering back to where we came from, and continue to be a remote team. So, we're basically a startup company that's experiencing exactly what, large firms are experiencing now. It's, just that's where we started. As far as me personally, I used to work for government contractors, the really big firms that you do certain things with big technologies and technical infrastructure. And even when I did that, these government services firms, they're so big that you actually work remotely, from wherever you are. So, I've actually been doing remote development, for most of that 20 years that I mentioned.
Wow, it's a long time. So did you actually work from home, or did you go into a remote office for those companies?
A little bit of both. It really depends. There were some cases where you work for a client on behalf of your company, and so you would go to their company offices. And obviously, the clients are all over the country. Some of them are all over the world, so you might fly out, for a week or a month or whatever. And when you're not doing that, you might work in different satellite offices, so you need to be very lean and carry a really small footprint. And then when you're not doing that, for the small amounts of time that you're actually at home, you might as well develop from home. So it's basically run the gamut, and over those years, I've really trained to work in a COVID situation, I guess you would say.
And of those different scenarios, which one was your favorite? In the other city for a month, or working from home, or?
Well, personally, I always enjoyed working from home because that gives me the flexibility to get done what needs to be done, as far as supporting the family, and then being able to work at any hour of the day or night or extremely early morning, depending on
Yes.
how you work best. So I've always found that to be, the best thing for me. And, contrast that with, certain companies that you might work for, and, they'll say you have to be in the office at 9 a.m. or you have to be in the office at 8 a.m. regardless of traffic and stuff like that. And I've never found that to be, useful for me. I've always considered myself to be very creative in terms of what I bring to a development team. I have to be able to think on my feet. I have to be able to answer questions that come up. And being creative, you can't really be creative on a schedule, in my opinion. So,
I agree.
for me, I've always found that to be, a little bit better for my own kind of work ethic and lifestyle.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And just out of curiosity, is most of your development team in the Boston area, or are they in other parts of the country or world?
So we actually have a large portion of our team that is in New York, scattered around New York, interestingly enough. But, we also have, I mentioned we have, part of our team is still in Kansas City. We have Boston. So we're basically scattered. But I think the biggest thing, is we really embrace the remote development and remote team as an entire company, right? Everyone's remote, and that allows us to each focus on what we focus on and come together, over, like something like Zoom as we're doing here, but come together every now and then when the team needs to meet. But other than that, you go off and get done what needs to get done.
Yeah, especially in startup mode, you can do a lot of stuff remotely. You just got to get a lot of code out there and a lot.
Yeah.
Right. I know that feeling. I've been through it. So what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think could be done differently to make it more effective?
Yeah. So the way that I think about it is, at some point I realized we talked about JavaScript, and just realizing that technology is always getting better. We started off where, there was no internet, obviously, right? And now there's an internet, and, you can get you can be a consumer and request a lot of things from, remote parts of the world. But I think beyond that, the technology itself continues to improve. And, we're getting things like, 5G and, who knows, if someone's listening to this, in 5 years, they might be saying, wow, that's so antiquated, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's exactly what happens is as the technology gets better, as the networks get better, as interconnectivity and the tools get less expensive, it makes it that more likely that everyone will be working remote, whether they want to or not. And, I've seen that over the years, but, I think right now a lot of other people are seeing it as well.
I agree. So we've talked a little bit about Forefront, but why don't you tell us, what Forefront's about? What is your product? Who's your target audience? All those things.
Yeah, sure. So Forefront, really grew out of a need that in the diversity inclusion space, where we recognize that we want to always support diverse teams. Recognizing that it's not about, giving like a handout to individuals, right? It's more empowering your team to do better, to think differently, and do a whole lot more and better. So what we're doing now is, as everyone is going online, and it's something that we saw, even before COVID, that with the technologies that are allowing folks to work remotely and work online and reach their customers, via different technologies, whether it's Facebook or, chatbots as we're, building, that you really want to be able to bring those lessons that the company learned over the years of supporting diversity and inclusion, bring those, focus on the culture into the chatbots that will interact with your end users and customers. So that's how we're thinking about it. And in doing so, we're looking to partner with Fortune 500 companies, relatively large companies, but these are, folks who generally recognize, they do have a need, whether it's in a mentorship program or in their recruiting programs, they do have that need to focus on their culture and making sure that it is inclusive and diverse. And so these are folks that we target as customers, and we really look at them as partners. One really good example of that is a program that we started called the Forefront Fellowship, where individuals actually come and work with us as a technology company, and they are, this might be their first job out of school. There might be, an opportunity for them to work. It's sort of like an internship on steroids, right? They get an opportunity to actually work on, technology and products that are relevant. And at the same time, they're gaining skills that then they can take to the employers that we partner with. It really goes to show that the folks that we're working with, they actually have the capability. We just need to show that they can do it, and they can do it, if they can do it on our team, and we can, use their experience to get them hired at some of the Fortune 500 companies. I think, that's basically a win-win for everyone.
Very interesting. So sounds like it's almost, it's like the stepping stone for, kids right out of college, and you deal with kids still in college? Like do you mentor them in their final year or final 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. And, a good example of that is, folks who are currently, getting services, let's say from their universities, career development departments, or their career placement departments. These different types of students require some help in finding that first job, right? So, it's not just they graduate and then they get a job, right? They sometimes need some support. And, some of our chatbots, we actually have multiple. We started with one, but it made sense to actually allow our chatbots to evolve. And so we actually have multiple that address the different needs that both universities and companies have. So they're able to, help with their mentorship programs. They're able to help with their students in the case of universities. And, really what it does is it augments what they already do. So if a student's, thinking it's 4 a.m. and they need to, be prepared for this interview, right? They can access a chatbot, whereas they might not be able to, access their advanced placement type of support network. And so with these kinds of capabilities, we actually work in tandem with the organizations that we partner with.
Very cool. And being in Boston, there's some pretty good universities there from what I hear, right?
There are. And just like we see, right, these universities are going online, and, they themselves are trying to find ways to help their students and provide for them, remotely. So I think it works in our favor, unfortunately. Or I guess the way I should say it is, unfortunately, there's some people who are suffering because of COVID, but obviously in any type of scenario like that where there are challenges, there are also opportunities. And we happen to be a company that's, because we've been focused on this and, helping folks in this space, we're able to provide that help, moving forward as well.
Yes. So it sounds like your company is already remote, and they started remote. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
So, and you've been with them for a year. When did they start? How long ago did they start the company?
Yeah, the company was started 3 years ago, and really started as a consultancy. So, the founders would go to a seminar, and they might host a seminar, for these larger companies, right? And so what, let's say a year ago when I came on board, the idea was to take the lessons that they learned there, and, the content that they were developing, the curriculum, the partnerships that they were forming, in training, and putting all of that into the technology that is the chatbot. So, a bot might respond to you. You might go to a website and say, hello, how are you doing? And, the bot will have a conversation with you. And throughout that process, it might figure out, oh, you know what? You're someone who could benefit from, this thing that we offer over here, or, these partners that we have on the other side, and then be able to have that discussion with you, right? So, and provide those resources. So the way that we're thinking about it from a company standpoint is just, making sure that the lessons that the founders gained over the years, that those lessons are being put into chatbot technology, so that the companies are able to be more effective in serving their audience and their customers and their end users.
Very interesting. So the ongoing pandemic, basically forced all companies to go remote. Back in mid-March, you already were remote. So I'm assuming technically it wasn't a big challenge for you, but were there any challenges or roadblocks that you didn't expect?
Yeah, well, it so happens that we were actually in the middle of Techstars in Atlanta at the time. So we were actually one of the companies that was affected directly when, in the middle of the program, Techstars decided that, for the safety of all involved, that, everyone just needed to leave where they were, right? We were in Atlanta, we needed to leave and relocate. So, we were in that a situation where obviously, we know what it is to work remote and what it means and how to prepare and how to be productive while remote. But, it's very challenging to do that in the middle of the week when, one day you're working in the office and then the next day you absolutely have to leave, right? So that definitely gave us the opportunity to be empathetic as we were reaching out to even potential customers. We recognized that, initially, or they might have had a plan, this is where we want to take the company, this is what we want to do for our employees. In the case of universities, this is what we want to do for our students. But, as they're recovering and trying to take their entire operation online, that means that as vendors might be reaching out to them, they might have less time for your vendors because you need to focus more on your end users or your customers. So, that allowed us to take a step back, focus on our product, making sure that we're providing value, and, then reach out again, in a few weeks when we can come back and help them in their transition, because that's really what we are. It's, we're a small business, like a lot of other small businesses. We're a startup, but in order for us to be successful, we have to be helpful to our customers, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah, and since you brought up the Techstars thing, did they discontinue the program in March, or did they continue it remotely?
Yeah, it was a continuation, and we actually went through to demo day like a lot of programs. It just so happened that for demo day was virtual as opposed to in person. But one of the great things about the program is the network, and Techstars is huge. There are a lot of individuals all across the country, all around the world, that we really focus on giving first. So if I've got a need and I can articulate it well enough and I reach out, someone on the other side of the network is happy to help me, and vice versa. We're happy to help anyone as well. So I think just being part of the program is great, but being part of the network is even better.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like an alma mater, like a university, right?
Absolutely.
Very similar.
Absolutely.
Yes. So finally, there's companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups. You're already remote, so how important do you think this is going to be going forward for companies like yourself that need to hire certain talent and they need to hire them in a hurry?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things to think about is, you guys were already doing this, right? And it's not like you said, okay, we're into hiring developers, and then COVID happened and you're like, okay, now we're into hiring remote developers, right? So you already had some insight that this was a trend. And, I would encourage you to recognize that that you're on the right path, you're on the right track, and double down, right? Find out how you can help other companies as they transition, as they recognize that we're not going to have someone come into the office. But we do need to realize that developers, especially folks who are creative, they can do this work anywhere, right? You just need a computer, you just need to do some coding, and then when you're done, you can post it, maybe to Google or to AWS, Azure, a bunch of the other,
right.
Online infrastructure, and your website will be up. Your customers will be able to buy from you. Everyone's happy. So you should really focus on treating your developers right wherever they are. So that's how I would think about it. If I was a company out there hiring developers, and I think the fact that you guys are doing a ton to support those companies in finding the right talent, I think that's that speaks really positively of where you guys will be in the future.
Well, thank you. And I mean, speak from personal experience. I've personally managed development teams in 4 different continents. So that and I know some of the other people in Gaper have too. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges is that companies now are forced to go remote, and all of a sudden, well, wait, I don't have to hire someone within a half hour. I can go anywhere. As long as we're remote, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's not just that, right? It's like you also don't have to have them in the office like say 9 a.m. right, for those companies that say that that's a requirement, and therefore you're sitting over their shoulder watching them. Hey, are they coding right now? Oh no, are they online or whether? No, I think companies really need to, and managers really need to focus more on outcomes, right? It doesn't matter when they coded this stuff. Is it working? Did they code it at 4 a.m.? Who cares? Is it working? Right? That's if they can focus on that, I think we'll all be in a better place.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's weird because I'm in San Francisco, and I mean, I got back 2 hours a day when I didn't have to go into the office, right?
Absolutely.
That's huge. That's a quality of life. And I noticed that generally when you have to be in at 9, right, you generally leave at 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you work from home, it's kind of like I kind of have to remind myself sometimes. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. I have to go to the gym. I have to get some exercise.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I really like that. It's all about, once you realize where your talent is, personally, this is my talent, right? This is what I can do. If you can do that anywhere, then everyone around you will benefit from you being able to do that.
Yes.
And if that makes you happy, then the company is going to be happy and the company is going to be successful. So that's how you always just want to empower your employees, make them be happy wherever they are, whether it's in the office or remote. And your company will benefit and you will benefit.
I agree. Well, Clynton, this has been a great discussion. I want to thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And have a great night.
All right. Thanks. You too.
Bye.